Just look at someone next to you, tell them you look so great today. You look good today. Turn to your next neighbor, tell them you look better than them. I don't know about you, but I am so excited because it is Sunday. It's Sunday once again, but there's another reason for me to be excited today. Today is my wife's birthday. Today is her birthday. So if you see her, just greet her. If you want to give gifts to her, you could e-transfer her. I'm not saying you should, but we will always accept e-transfers to her. So just on your way, just celebrate her birthday for us. Well, welcome to church. I'm glad you're here today again. I know the weather is kind of weird today, that now it's snowing again. I really thought it was going to be spring, but there was just one more thing that came. I pray that this is the last time I see snow. But even though I see snow today, there's just been a shift. I'm starting to see a shift right now, especially in the season that we're in. In the pandemic, I'm starting to see a shift. Now things are getting a little bit back to normal. When I go to the grocery stores, it kind of looks like pre-pandemic. It looks like something that I haven't seen for so long. It's getting a little bit back to normal. And many of us are excited again for this. Now that restrictions are going down, mandates are going down, many of you are going out and eating. You're already planning for your trip to the Philippines, planning your trip on vacations. We're all excited for this shift. And I can also see a type of shift in the season or the climate that we're in. We're trying to shift from one season to the next, but God said no. We're still in winter. I've noticed that the seasons that we go through physically with the climate forces us to change our behavior. It forces us to change what we dress, what we act, what we expect. The decisions we make changes between seasons. So the expectations you have in winter is not the same expectations in summer. It's not the same decisions. The thing in spring and fall, they're different seasons, so you have different behaviors. Especially, we live in Toronto, so we have 4 seasons, sometimes in one day. So we have to change based on the season to deal with the season. Now, in terms of our spiritual life, it's important for us to adapt and to change and to really react to the seasons of our climate. But in terms of your spiritual life, what I don't want you having is just seasons of faith. That in some seasons you have faith, but in other seasons you don't. I want you to have faithfulness. I want you to have faithfulness in one season and also the next. Not faithfulness in one season and then the next you're not. Not give it your all in one season and then the next you're not. Not surrender in one season but in another you're not. Last week, if you were here, I talked about faithfulness. Everyone say faithfulness. Everyone say faithfulness. Turn to someone next to you, tell them wake up. Wake up. Faithfulness. I talked about faithfulness. And I talked about if you are faithful in little, you'll be faithful in much. And it's a sense that, we got to be faithful for what God has given us right now. Not when God gives us more, not when God increases it. Be faithful right now. But I also want you to understand, you need to be faithful in all seasons of your life. You will go through many seasons of your life, but don't let your faithfulness waver between seasons. Stay strong in your faith. Stay faithful in the one who remains faithful, and the one who never changes. I think our problem is not having these bursts of faithfulness. And that's what I tend to see. We got these bursts of faithfulness where we're so faithful in a moment that when you are encouraged, when you feel filled, when you feel inspired, it's so easy for you to be faithful. So I don't think the problem is these bursts of faithfulness. I think the problem that we have is staying faithful. Staying faithful when you are discouraged, staying faithful when you feel empty, staying faithful when you are lacking. I think that's our problem. Staying faithful in all seasons, not just for a moment. So this is where God brought me today to talk about this. In 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 41 to 46, it says this. Then Elijah said to Ahab, "Go get something to eat and drink, for I hear a mighty rainstorm coming." So Ahab went to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel, bowed low to the ground, and prayed with his face between his knees. Then he said to his servant, "Go and look towards the sea." The servant went and looked, then returned to Elijah and said, "I didn't see anything." 7 times Elijah told him to go and look. Finally, on the 7th time, his servant told him, "I saw a little cloud the size of a man's hand rising from the sea." Then Elijah shouted, "Hurry to Ahab and tell him, 'Climb to your chariots and go back home. If you don't hurry, the rain will stop you.' And soon the sky was black with clouds. A mighty wind brought a terrific rainstorm, and Ahab left quickly for Jezreel. Then the Lord gave special strength to Elijah. He tucked his cloak into his belt and ran ahead of Ahab's chariot all the way to the entrance of Jezreel. Today, in these few moments, this is what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about hear and see. Hear and see. Turn to someone on your right. Tell them, "I'm listening." Turn to someone on your left. Tell them, "I'm focused." Okay, I'm listening and I am focused. Now, for me, growing up, one of the biggest dreams that I had as a kid, I think the biggest dream I had as a kid was finishing school. And you may be thinking, "Oh, Pastor Mark, his dream is finishing school because he wants to live his career, he wants to work in his job." That's not the reason why that's my dream. The reason why the biggest dream I had was to finish school was because I didn't want to go to school. That's my biggest dream. I didn't want to go to school. I don't like how the formula was like at school. I don't like the assignments. I don't like the homework. So my biggest dream was just finish it and never go back to it. And I never went back. I'm telling you that. And I think the reason why that's my biggest dream is because during school, I have a hard time paying attention. Especially if it's a subject that is boring. I don't know how you do it, but I can't stay awake. As science class comes in, I don't know what it is, but the Lord's Spirit gives me so much rest that I end up sleeping in science. I don't know how you nurses, how you doctors go through all that terminology, all that type of stuff. It's boring. And especially, going into university, it just got even worse. In university, the morning class, the very early class in the morning, I don't know what it is in the morning, but again, the Holy Spirit just comes upon me and gives me rest. I had Greek in the morning, and I'm telling you, I don't know how I passed. Always ended up sleeping. You know what I've noticed? There are certain things that cut off when we don't pay attention. And the first thing I've noticed that cuts off is your hearing. That's the first thing that cuts off when you stop paying attention. So when you're not paying attention, whatever the professor is saying, nothing is going through. You know the saying, in one ear, out the other? That literally happens. And then the students will start doing this. They would start gazing in a different direction, and they would start spacing out. Today we call that daydreaming. They start daydreaming. So they look like they are paying attention, but they're really not. Nothing is coming in. So that's the first step. We start daydreaming. Now, when we have this first step of daydreaming, we're disengaged with the study, we're disengaged with the class. And if you are tired, especially during that day, this is the second thing that cuts off. You're seeing. So now, like you're daydreaming, and you want that to be real. So now you dream for real. You close your eyes and sleep. Fully disengage. Now this applies to everything. Everything that you have to sit through that's boring. You know in those Zoom meetings that you have to go to, the first thing that you do when you don't want to pay attention, maybe you mute the Zoom, but you keep your face there to seem like you're there in class. And if you want to be more extreme, you turn off your camera. I know for some students here, my wife especially, she was going through university online. She would wake up, go on Zoom, shut her camera, shut her sound, and go to sleep. Disengage. Not paying attention. Even in church, I can tell when you're not paying attention. You don't think I see you? I see you. When I start seeing you, you start looking somewhere else. You start gazing somewhere else. I know you're not paying attention. You're spacing out. Maybe you're daydreaming. I see you, like, if I see you on your phone, and maybe you're taking notes, but then you start laughing, but I haven't said a joke. I can't see you smile, but your eyes start glistening and I haven't said anything. I know you're not really taking notes. You're distracted. For my young people, if I start seeing you do this and that, I know what you're doing. And also you're distracted when there's a baby here and you start playing with the baby rather than listening to the word. I know you're not engaged with it. I know you're not engaged. And for some of you, I see you as well, that again, the Holy Spirit comes upon you and you start closing your eyes and you're not praying for me. You're sleeping. You see, I could tell all of this based on the posture that you have. I can tell that you are engaged with the message based on the posture that you have right now. So if I look at your posture, you're sitting up, your eyes are open, you're taking notes, you're agreeing with the message, you're responding to the message, I know you are engaged based on your posture. A lot of you started sitting up right now. But if I see you start slouching, you're getting a little bit comfortable, you start, dozing off, you start spacing out, I know you're not engaged. I can tell how much you are engaged based on your posture. And from this understanding, I could also tell where your faith is based on your posture, the posture of your faith. I Googled what posture was because I really wanted to know the definition before I talked about it. And what posture is, according to the dictionary, is an approach to something, an attitude towards something, or a particular way of dealing with something. So when I talk about the posture of your faith, how are you approaching situations in terms of your faith? How are you approaching your attitude in terms of your faithfulness? An indication that you believe in God is not just shouting about it on Sundays, but it's staying in a posture of faith. How are you approaching situations? What is your attitude in certain seasons? Are you speaking faith into it, into a season or into a situation? The only way you speak faith is really the posture of your faith. Faithfulness, again, I'm talking about this. Faithfulness, I've come to understand, is consistency. That's what faithfulness is. And the reason why we call God faithful is because He is consistent. Our God is the same God yesterday, today, and forever. What that means is that He's done it before, He'll do it now, and He'll do it forevermore. That's what it means for Him to be faithful. He's consistent in what He says. He doesn't lie in what He says. He never changes. And I believe our belief in God, or our way we believe, should be consistent too throughout all seasons, or even more so in other seasons. But if you find yourself, it's hard to believe right now, what happens to our faith is it starts wavering. And we start losing hope. And we start losing faith. And the posture of our faith then is becoming affected. You know what your belief does? Your belief will affect your posture. And the position of your faith will determine the position of your posture. If you believe this, then your posture is this. But if you don't believe, your posture is that. I want to talk about this understanding of the posture of our faith. And a way I'm going to teach this is the story of Elijah. Elijah, everyone say Elijah. Elijah. So here we have Elijah. What's happening right now is 3.5 years, there was no rain. There was a drought. And the reason that happened is because God wanted to show his people he was the God of nature. What was happening in Israel was that they were worshiping other idols. And the current idol that they were worshiping was a god called Baal. Baal was a god that was known to control the weather. So what God did instead is that he was trying to make his people see, I'm the God who controls the weather. So he stopped the rain for 3.5 years. Not only that, he also had a contest with Baal. God had a contest with Baal with water, with lightning, and with fire. And God, Yahweh, performed all of that to show his people he's the true God that controls nature. From there, Elijah defeated 400 prophets of Baal. But there's still one problem. It hasn't rained still. God performed the miracle of the water, the lightning, and the fire, but it still hasn't rained. There was still a drought. So in verse 41, Elijah said to Ahab, who was the king of Israel, after defeating the prophets, Elijah told him, go get something to eat and drink. Then he says something weird here. For I hear a mighty rainstorm coming. For I hear a mighty rainstorm coming. Now, here's the question. How was Elijah able to hear something in the drought? Even a bigger question, how does Elijah still know what rain sounds like after 3.5 years? For me, we've been in the pandemic for 2.5 years, almost 2.5 years, and I'm still getting used to people not wearing a mask. It's weird to see people smile. It's weird for me. I'm not used to it. And I don't know how Elijah still understood, still knew what rain sounds like. You know, it's hard to know the sound of something when it's gone for so long. But he says here, I hear a mighty rainstorm coming. But currently, they were in a drought. And when you look in the sky, there was no cloud. So how can you hear something with no signs of it? And how can you hear something when you see no evidence of it? And I was questioning God, how was he able to hear something that he couldn't see? And God told me, faith. It's faith. The Bible says, faith comes from hearing. Faith comes from hearing. And you know what's so important to hear in faith is that you need a posture of faith. To have a posture of faith is to hear something that is coming that you cannot see. Again, the Bible says, faith comes from hearing. Paul said this in terms of faith in God. To have faith in God is to hear the Gospels. But for me, I think hearing is one of the first initiators of our faith. Again, in terms of faith in God, when you hear the gospel, you have faith in Him. But also in your life, there will be things God speaks to you that you hear. And when you hear that, it gives you hope in what He will do. It gives you faith in what He will do. When God puts something in your heart, when He gives you a vision, when He impressed something in you, when He gives you a dream, that is God speaking to you so you can hear it, so you can have faith. Now, as I was studying this, commentaries were arguing, what was Elijah actually hearing in his ears? Was it a literal rainstorm that he heard, that he heard the winds that were coming? He has super sensitive ears like Spider-Man, and he had spidey senses, and he was able to hear the rain coming when there's no rain? Or was it God really speaking to the prophet, giving him a prophecy? The commentaries don't know what Elijah heard, but nonetheless, Elijah heard something. That's what's important. And he heard rain come in a drought. Oftentimes, when you hear from God, it will come in times where it's so hard to believe. When God speaks something in your life, it will come in times where it seems like it's so impossible. Like every time God impressed something in your heart, you're asking God, God, why did you give this to me now? Why not before when things were going great? You know, why didn't you give it before? Why now? Like when God gives something in your heart, you'll be questioning like, God, really? Like, is it even possible right now in this pandemic, in this climate, in the real estate right now? Is that even possible? Oftentimes when God speaks into your life, it will come in times where it's just so hard to believe. Not in the right time. You would say to yourself, why me? And you would dismiss what you heard from God. You really think, why me? Is this even possible in my life? I would say this a lot. We grew up in the barrio. I came from the barrio. I was playing in the mud. I was playing in the fields. I don't have formal education. I don't have a real job. I work part-time. It's hard for me to get to work. Is it even possible, Lord? How can I achieve this? You would say to yourself, is it even possible to be healed from this? Because I've been dealing with it for so long, and the doctor said this, and the doctor said that. Is it even possible? Can he even do this right now in my life? He's done it before in someone else's, but every time I ask from him, he doesn't do it for me. Can he do it for me? And when you see it's so impossible for you, what you tend to do for what you hear is you let go of what God spoke in your life and you throw it off into the wind. Now, as important as it is to hear from God, and that is important. That is the initiator, right? We hear from God. As important as it is to hear from God, it is crucial that what will you do from what you heard? It's crucial what you will do with what you heard from God. What will you do? Because it will determine whether you see what you heard or what you heard will stay as what you heard. What will you do with what you heard from God? Will you dismiss it or will you act on it? Church, I really want you to understand this. I want you to understand this. You will only go as far to the level of your belief. I would oftentimes say you would only go as far as your faith will take you. So if your faith's only this, that's how far you're going to go. You will only go as far as the level of your belief. And some of you today are dismissing what God has for you, the promises He has for you, because you don't believe that will be done to you. You believe for others, but to you it's hard. To you, you really have no faith in it. So my question to you today is this: what will you do with what you heard? Now the first thing that Elijah did, verse 42, this is the first thing Elijah did when he heard something. When he heard something from God. It says here, Ahab went to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel, bowed low to the ground, and prayed with his face between his knees. The first thing that he did when he heard something from God was pray. Now this was so important. He told Ahab, go eat, but then he didn't eat. I want you to notice, he had a contest with the prophets of Baal the whole day, meaning that he didn't eat. And after the contest, after the battle, there was a feast. Elijah's hungry. But when he heard something from God, he didn't eat first, he prayed. For some of us, we tend to eat first, forget, then pray. Like, when he heard something from God, he understood there's something more important I need to do now. It's to pray. And you may be thinking, why was that the first thing Elijah did? And you may give me the Christian answer, because praying is what we need to do as a Christian. We need to do that. But the reason why Elijah prayed first is because he wanted to make what he heard more than just what he heard. He wanted to see what he heard. So what he did was pray. In order for you to see what you heard from God, you need to take what you heard from God and get in a posture of faith. What a posture of faith is a humble posture. It's a posture of humility. You need to pray. A posture of faith is to be humble. It's to be able to get on your knees and pray. Elijah, the way he prayed was not a normal prayer. You know, sometimes when we pray, you're in your bed, you're laying down. That's when you pray. So comfortable. But Elijah, he took the opportunity, went to the top of the mountain, got on his knees, and not only that, he didn't stop there. He put his face between his knees, and this was the prophet that defeated 400 prophets of Baal. To be in that position is humbling, and some of us, we will not get on our knees because maybe we're too busy. Maybe we're too occupied. Maybe we have something else to do and we put prayer as last. But to pray is to be humble and to have humility. The position of your faith will determine the position of your posture. And if you have faith in God, it will make you get on your knees and pray. To foster what you heard in faith, you need to pray. Turn to someone next to you, tell them, pray. Pray. And it's more than just a quick prayer. If you want something, you really need to pray. Because you know, what you heard from God, it didn't come from you. What you heard came from God. So who do you think will do with what you heard? God. Now my question is, how can God answer prayers that you never prayed about? How can God answer your prayer if you don't take the time to pray? Some of you, you're so stressed, you have all these desires and you want all these things to be done, but you never prayed. And you're questioning why it's not happening. Like, if you want something, if you want to see something that you heard, you need to pray. If you want something, pray. If you want a boyfriend, don't just go on dating apps. Don't just go out here and there meeting all the people. If you want a boyfriend, pray. If you took the time to pray, as long as you were in your dating app, I'm telling you, you would have found one by now. Same thing with a girlfriend, same thing with finding a wife or finding a husband. Pray about it. If you want a home, pray. Don't just go to the realtors. Don't just go to people who have experience. Pray. If it's so impossible for you, then pray to God. He can do it. Pray. If you want a car, pray. If you want a job, pray. If you want work, pray. If you want provision, pray. Pray. Again, turn to someone next to you, tell them, I'll pray. Pray. Now, I'm not saying don't do those things. Like, don't go on dating. I'm not saying don't go on dating apps. I'm not saying don't go to realtors. But what I'm saying is this: don't exclude prayer out of it. In fact, that's the first thing that you need to do. Pray, because it will give you discernment on what you're supposed to do next. Pray. So this is what Elijah did. He climbed to the top of Mount Carmel. And why did he climb to the top? The reason why he climbed to the top is because he wanted to check the sea. Because rain came from the sea to the land, from east to west. So he wanted to climb to the top to check the sea if there was rain gonna come. But the funny thing is, Elijah didn't go all the way to the top. He only stopped to the point where he couldn't see the sea. So the place that he was at, he couldn't see the sea. Not only that, his face was towards the ground and in between his knees. So he couldn't see the sea, and now he's blocking his vision. He's blocking what he saw. And I think for myself, Elijah didn't want to see anything. Because one thing that disrupts what you hear from God is what you see. So what he did instead was he asked someone else to check for him, and it was his servant. In verse 43 it says this, he went to the top, then he said to his servant, go and look towards the sea. It wasn't Elijah that looked, it was the servant that looked. And here, I think Elijah is teaching us a very important principle when we want to have a posture of faith. And the principle is this: you cannot rely on your sight. When you hear something from God, when you get impressed in your heart, when God gives you a dream, your sight often contradicts what you hear. Sometimes when you hear from God, it's opposite from what you see in real life. So Elijah here, he was in a drought. How can you believe that rain was coming if it is in a drought right now? So what he did, he only climbed to the top where he couldn't see the sea, and he blocked his vision by keeping his face between his knees. He blocked his sight and prayed. I think for some of us today, we need to do this as well. We need to stop relying on our sight in order for us to believe in God, in what He said. We need to stop relying on what we see to believe. I often preach about this, about your sight, and your sight is often the reason why you have discouragement. You see something and it discourages you. Your sight is often the times why you have fear in the first place. You see something, you get scared and you have fear. Your sight is often the reason why you have anxiety, often the reason why you have fear. For me, every time I look at gas prices and it's going up, my anxiety is going up. My worry is going up. Now, every time I look at my bank account, it's going down. My hope goes down with it. It goes down and my anxiety goes up. And in fact, your sight sometimes seems more real to you than what you hear by faith. So you hear this: God is Jehovah Jireh. The Lord will provide. Do you believe that? He's Jehovah Jireh. He will provide for you. You believe? Amen. Do you believe that He will provide today? Now, I promise you, you believe that now, but when you open your bank app and you start seeing the debt, that seems more real to you. You believe more in your brokenness than God's faithfulness at that moment. You believe more in how broke you are than the Lord will provide, because our sight sometimes seems more real. So here Elijah is teaching us to be in a posture of faith is not to rely on our sight, because we walk by faith and not by sight. So again, verse 43, he told his servant, go and look towards the sea. He went and looked. Then he returned to Elijah and said, I didn't see anything. I want to read this in the NIV. The servant said this to Elijah in the NIV. He said, there is nothing there. There is nothing there. Now here we have Elijah. He is not relying on his sight. He has his face towards the ground. He can't really see the sea. So he's not relying on his sight. What he's relying then is the report that he hears. Now, what happens when the report that you hear also contradicts what you heard? What happens when your sight contradicts what you heard, but now also the report that you're hearing is contradicting what you heard? What do you do when both things are contradicting? And this is what Elijah did. Elijah said, go back. Go back. Go back. And the reason why he said this, what he really means is this: I will not accept nothing. I will not accept nothing. Now, what's important is not the bad report. That's not what's important. To be in a posture of faith is this: You need to not accept a report that doesn't line up with what you heard from God. The servant said nothing for the first time, and Elijah did not accept it because that's not what he heard. What he heard was rain, not nothing. He heard rain, so he didn't accept it. Elijah didn't go to the top of the mountain by faith. And then he started getting in a position that is so humiliating that he believed in God in the present. And then his servant came back one time and said, there's nothing there. Elijah didn't go like, well, I guess it didn't work. Like he didn't say, oh, I prayed the first time. I believed the first time. And what came back to me, it didn't work. So I guess God's not going to do it. That's how we treat it many times. We're like, I tried the first time, God. It didn't happen. I guess it's not going to happen. I believed and God, it didn't happen again. I guess it's not going to happen. Elijah didn't do that. When he received that report, what he said was, go back. Go back. He said it 7 times. Go back, go back, go back. Go back, go back. I lost count. Go back. He said, go back 7 times. And thank God it happened on the 7th time, because I'm worried for the servant going up and down. But I believe if it didn't happen the 7th time, he would have said it the 8th time and the 9th time and the 10th time until it was going to happen. To be in a posture of faith is to not accept a report less than what you heard and less than what you received. If God said it, He will do it. If God said it, He'll do it. And God is not a liar. He's not like everyone else that when they say something, they end up not really backing up in their word. But when God said it, He'll do it. He doesn't lie in what He says. Everything He says, He will back it up. He is faithful. So no matter the report you receive back, if it is not what God said for your life, do not accept anything less. You see, the report that Elijah was hearing did not break his posture. He stayed there until the answer of his prayers. Believing in God is not just, again, shouting about it, but believing in God is staying in a posture of faith. And no matter the report that you hear, you stay on your knees. Believing in God is staying in a posture of faith until what you heard becomes what you see. Do not depart from it until you see it. The report is not what's so important. The bad report that you hear is not what's so important. But how you reply to it, how you respond to it is important. Elijah said, go back. See here, Elijah, he was kind of stubborn. I think maybe his servant, by the 4th time, he's kind of tired. He's trying to convince Elijah, like, I did this 4 times already. There's really nothing in the sea. I really don't see anything. And you know how far that is. And you're just praying there. You're not even helping me. So, like, there's nothing. And Elijah said, go back. He was stubborn. The 5th time, the 6th time, and the 7th time, he was stubborn. Go back. Sometimes we need to be stubborn with the promises of God. Not sometimes. All the time, you should be stubborn with God's promises. You should keep it in your heart. You should be stubborn with it. Now, some of you are stubborn. Look at someone next to you. Did they look stubborn to you? Some of you are stubborn. And we're stubborn in different ways. Sometimes you're so stubborn in your feelings. Some of you are stubborn with your attitude. Some of you are stubborn with decisions you keep making. Like your friends would keep telling you this and that, but you never do it. Your parents keep telling you to do this and that, you never do it. And you're stubborn. Church, if you're going to be stubborn, if you have a reason to be stubborn, please be stubborn in the right things. If you have a reason to be stubborn with the promises of God. That is there for you. and it cannot be taken from you. If God said it, He will do it. You need to be stubborn. Whatever the enemy is whispering in your ears, just tell the enemy, go back. Get out of here. Go back to where you belong. Go back to where you belong. Go back. Remind him of his future, not yours. Well, wait. Remind him of your future. Okay? Remind him of this as well. Did I say that right? Anyways, go back. Be persistent. Don't accept that report. Elijah stayed in a posture. And that's what faith is. Faith is staying in a posture and staying till you see what you heard. In verse 44, it says this, finally. Everyone say finally. Finally. I'm so excited until I could say finally. Aren't you excited for that when you could say finally? Finally. The seventh time, his servant told him, I saw a little cloud, the size of a man's hand. I don't know what type of vision he had. He was able to see this, but he saw a size of a man's hand, a cloud the size of a man's hand rising from the sea. Then Elijah shouted, hurry, tell Ahab, climb into your chariot, go back home. If you don't hurry, the rain will stop you. See, this is so funny, okay? Elijah heard a mighty rainstorm coming. And just picture that, mighty rainstorm coming. What the servant saw was a cloud the size of a man's hand. And here we have Elijah saying, hurry, the rain is coming. The rain. Elijah, that doesn't look like rain. I'm like, why is Elijah saying, hurry, tell Ahab? Why was he so excited for this? Because what he heard was rain. What he saw was this. And I'm just like, Elijah, wait. That doesn't look like rain, Elijah. Elijah, actually, this is barely anything. This is barely anything. So why should you hurry? Because clearly it's not raining. And I was asking God, like, God, why is Elijah so excited for this? And I'm not looking at it at the end product. I'm looking at it of what he was going through in the moment. Why was he excited for this? For something so small? And God impressed to me this, how we deal with prayer. When we pray, we expect our prayers to be answered in its entirety and instantaneous. So when we pray, we expect God to do it in this type of way that we want to see. So when you pray for a home, what you want to see is, bam, home, right there in its entirety, how you imagine it. When you pray for healing, what you expect is to be healed, bam, right there, completely healed, that's it. Now, I believe God can do that, and He will do that. He could answer prayers in its entirety and in its whole instantaneously. God can do that. But if that's the way you always expect God to answer your prayers with a big sign in order for you to believe He answered your prayer, then you'll be missing out in the miracle that God is doing in the present. I've come to understand why Elijah was excited with this. It's because he was in a posture of faith. You know what a posture of faith is? It's not just expecting something big to happen. But to be in a posture of faith is to be able to see something that wasn't there, but now it's here, no matter how small it is. I'm going to repeat that. To be in a posture of faith is not just waiting for something big to happen, but it's to be able to have the discernment to see something that wasn't there, but is now here, no matter how small. I'll give you an understanding of this. The whole time, there was no cloud in sight for Elijah. In fact, I think for 3.5 years, there was no cloud rising from the sea at all. But now there was. And that's a miracle. Something that was not there, but now is here. And that's a miracle. Sometimes you gotta celebrate the little things that God is doing in your life. Something that was not there, but now it's here. That's a miracle. Like when you lost work and you were finding out, how am I going to pay for rent? And God provided just even a little bit of cash. What wasn't there is now here. That's a miracle. That's what it is to be in a posture of faith. To be able to see something that wasn't there, but now it's here. And sometimes it takes faith to believe God is going to do something great with something small. See, to be in a posture of faith is to have discernment. Everyone say discernment. This is so important that you need to have. Because if you have discernment, you will understand what is to come next. I want you to notice, this became a rainstorm. I want you to notice this. If God provided you in a pandemic, what more else would God do when this season is over? I want you to realize this. I've seen some of you. You have purchased homes in a pandemic. You purchased homes when the economy crashed. You were able to purchase homes when interest rates were going up, or did it go up? Or when the housing prices go up. You were able to purchase a home in this climate, in this pandemic. What more else is to come when this pandemic is over? If God did this here, what will He do next? You have to realize, if God did this in a pandemic right now for me, what is going to happen next when we're out of this season? What is going to happen with something small that God is going to do? See, this is what happened. You need to take every little thing that has came in your life that wasn't there before, and you need to look at it with hope in what God is going to do next. In verse 45, and soon. Everyone say soon. Everyone say soon. And soon, this cloud became a sky that was black with clouds. And a heavy wind brought a terrific rainstorm. Elijah was able to see what he heard when he kept his posture of faith. He was consistent in it. He didn't depart from it. To be faithful is to stay in that posture despite the reports that you are hearing. The rain came because he kept his face between his knees and prayed. And he didn't depart from it. And because of that, what he heard then became what he saw. Church, I have something to tell you today. If you heard it from God, get in a posture of faith. And do not depart from it until you see it by faith. I promise you, what you hear will then become what you see if you keep your posture. Stand to your feet. You know, church, I want you to come to the point in your life where you can finally say this word, finally. I really do, church. I really want you to be blessed. I really want you to be able to come to a point in your life where you can just say, finally. You know, that word will be so sweet to your lips when you understand what it took for you. What it took for you to finally say it. But church, you can't say it if you give up. If you get out of that posture because the report that you've been hearing hasn't lined up with what you heard from God, or what you've been seeing doesn't line up from what you heard from God, and then you just start giving up. Church, I don't want you to miss out on saying, finally. We want to celebrate when you said finally. We want as a church to celebrate when you say, finally. And you know, church, God is faithful. Again, God is faithful. If He said it, then He'll do it. God did not put that in your heart for no reason. Why would God put that in your heart and then not answer that prayer? Or not answer what He put there? God put that in your heart because He is going to do what He said He'll do. But again, what are you going to do from what you heard? Are you going to dismiss it because you think it's so impossible? Or are you going to act on it? How you act on what you heard is that you get in this posture of faith. That you won't leave, you won't depart until you see what you heard. Church, I believe, again, 2022 is a year of God's favor in your life. Last year, I think that's what I saw. A cloud. A little cloud the size of a man's hand. And that's why I started the series of favor. And that's why I believe this year is a year of God's favor. But yet again, this year doesn't really sound like God's favor. That's the report that we're saying. What are you going to do with this? Are you going to keep believing in this? Because I'm telling you, this year, by faith, will be a year of favor in your life. Rain is coming. Rain is coming. So church, why don't you just get in this posture and believe in it?